Medical Group YouTube program. Today we'll be talking about getting our COVID-19 vaccine. We haven't yet, and Dr. Gwain's not even in the studio yet. He's still finishing up with a very young patient, but he will be here shortly. He's actually working with a medical student with a young patient. So we will be going with both of us very shortly, but for now, until Dr. Gwain arrives, I can actually start to interact with the live audience on the chat. And for those of you watching this after the live production of the stream, the reason that we talk on this show to somebody sending messages to us is because there's a live chat on YouTube. And if you're not a part of our channel and already participating in that, you can. Actually, I can take this off until Dr. Gwain comes in. I'll just put it here until he gets in. So what you would do is make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon, and adjust your notifications in your settings on your mobile device to be able to get notifications for when we go live, and then you can participate in the chat. Well, let's go ahead and see who's in the chat right now. We have a message from Sharon Elias Hudnall saying that as of this morning, the half dose of the Moderna vaccine is reported to be, I'm sorry, I've got that backwards. She reported that there was an action by the FDA to order there to be half doses of vaccine given. And I checked and found out it's not exactly that. It's that the Moderna vaccine, specifically in age groups 18 to 55, has been found to be equally effective to the full dose. So there is discussion about cutting down the dose that's given to 18 to 55-year-olds of the Moderna vaccine for COVID-19. Give them half a dose at both administrations of it, and then the people will do just as well as the people 55 and older who get the full dose. So that would be a way to save a lot of vaccine at a time when we're really trying to get more vaccine out to people. This is such an issue that Dr. Gwain and I, until this morning, was it this morning? I'm trying to think if it was actually in the afternoon. Yeah, it wasn't until this afternoon that we actually even knew where we were going to get the vaccine from. And thankfully now we're scheduled and have an appointment time when we will get it. It is not yet being given in our office or out of our office and won't be for a while still. We're still in the application process through our county, who has sent us emails to make us think that we will, or the state of California, to make us think that we will be able to get some vaccine in the future. We just don't have dates. So we're still in the application process. We still have one little thing we have to get just right on that, and then we will be waiting to get word for when we'll be able to distribute vaccine. Obviously, it won't be the Pfizer product because we do not have the ability to store something at 70 degrees below 0 Celsius. Let me go ahead and check, see if you have comments or questions coming. Oh, yeah, Robert Antonio saying hello. Hello, Robert. Suki saying hello to all. And Real Ruler saying he has a question, he or she. We've all seen the pictures of the coronavirus, heard about a lot of false negatives / positives. Why not just put a drop of blood under a... Okay, so Robert Ruler, we don't look for virus under microscopes. Viruses are so small you can't see them under light microscopes. You can see them with electron. Let me get my emphasis on the right syllable here. Electron microscopy can get you visible images of it. But I don't even know if it would be easy to tell visually on a scanning an electron microgram the COVID-19 virus from another one. So we do it the easier way, and that's to get a blood sample, put on a test. And what you're talking about, there's going to be false negatives and false positives too. One thing that I find that people who aren't in medicine don't relate to is the uncertainty of testing. And people who are in the sciences, engineers and such, understand this concept of tests not being 100% for both if the problem's there, saying it's there, it's not there, and if the problem's not there, saying it's not there or it is there. You see there's 4 possibilities there for any question. And so we have to do these tests and have some way to test the test, often referred to as the gold standard. So we do the best we can and do the best with the resources we have available. For example, a test that costs $500 per patient per time they're tested, because sometimes people get tested more than once. That's just undoable. When we do get a test that's, say, maybe $20 a test, well, that's a lot more doable, and we can do that actually in the real world with patients and get an adequate supply of the testing materials, or even less, some of the tests now. So we do the best we can, and we find that some tests do better under certain conditions. For example, the one we use in the office is really good if a person has symptoms of COVID-19, because they're much more likely to actually have it if the test turns positive. So it increases your true positive rate. So we do repeat test people who have a negative test, even if they have symptoms. And if people don't have symptoms, we don't even use that test on them because it's not considered adequately accurate. Okay, going back to your questions and comments, we have real ruler. Oh, yeah, that was your question. Oh, okay, apparently I answered it. Effective scale of the virus in comparison to other structures. Yeah, viruses, tiny, tiny, tiny things. We can't see them in light microscopes. So we test with something else that can give us an indirect, and that's part of the reason for false positives and false negatives being an issue. You're going to have that more when you're measuring is an indirect measure of what you're trying to measure, or a surrogate, as we often refer to it in medical science. And we also have notes from Laura Berzik, who is saying hello to everybody in Chicago. Thank you, Laura. We recommend, or we thank you for watching from Chicago. And we also have Robert Antonio, not heard of the effectiveness of a reduced dosage of the vaccine. What that part of the FDA data? So, was that part of the data is not the FDA's own data. The data comes from the company that did the study, Moderna, and finding that when people got a lower dose, they actually did very well if they were between 18 and 55. Now, my information, I talk about not measuring directly, my information actually came from a news outlet, not from the actual study. So take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of times our medical correspondents for the major news outlets don't necessarily read things the same way I would if I actually went to the source material, which I haven't had time to since I just got this comment earlier this afternoon. Melody Scott, hello, how strong do you feel about the vaccine? This strong. That's how strong I feel about the vaccine. Thank you for asking, though. Yes, we are getting our office vaccinated here coming, it looks like this week. I think we'll be able to get everybody in this week. We'll see. Dr. Gwain and I are very excited that we'll be getting it. I wish he could express his own excitement. As soon as he gets out of the room, gets in here, he'll do just that. And Bebsy Brian says, hello from the Philippines. Hello, we are so glad to have an international audience with our show today. And that's not too unusual. We often have people from either Australia, like Adelaide from Australia, or Adelaide? No, Andrea from Adelaide in Australia, and often people from Great Britain, the UK. Specifically, is it Laura or is it? You'll tell me, won't you? Some of our viewers who know our regulars will let us know. Okay, good. Good answer for Robert. And thank you for providing those questions. So we found out this afternoon that we are able to get some doses that have been held for us. This is interesting because I just read an article in Stat News also today about primary care doctors like us, independents, not knowing where they're going to get their shot from. Now, the survey that they were referring to was taken, when was it? Mid-December, or a little bit before mid-December, like 11th to 12th, somewhere around there in December, where about 26% of primary care providers didn't know where they were going to get their COVID-19 shot from, let alone whether they'll be able to have it to distribute to their patients through their office. That has changed for our office today, and obviously since how many days ago, over 20 days ago, it's certainly changed in a lot of other offices since that time. So it's not as bad as that article in Stat News that just came out today or yesterday that makes it sound like nobody knows where they're getting the shot in primary care. That's old news. There are still people like that. In fact, people like me who are getting it from the same source as me may not have read that email yet to know that there's a place for them to get it, and there's actually doses reserved for them. But I noticed when I signed up for my time to get it that, just between myself and Dr. Gwain, we had different times because all of the doses for my time had already been taken, and we were signing up for it at the same time. So it's going quick. Looking back to your questions and comments. Oh, Bebsy's always watching. Thank you, Bebsy. Good to know that somebody in the Philippines is always watching. And then Connie Bissy. I'm not getting the vaccine because I don't think there is enough research on it. Well, let's talk about the research on the vaccine. So, and it also depends on which one you're talking about, because we can't say the vaccine anymore. We have 2 that are FDA approved in the United States, 2 that are being given, 2 that have been given to tens of thousands of recipients at this point. In fact, was it last week? The number had already been 500,000 who had received the Pfizer vaccine. This is happening fast. So I believe by the end of this week, 1 million will have received the Pfizer vaccine. I don't know how many the Moderna, and it's interesting that many more people received the Moderna vaccine last week, which in the United States really was only a half week, than had received the Pfizer vaccine because of the logistics problems with that Pfizer product needing to have that cold storage and that cold chain all the way through from factory to end distribution site. So data for the vaccine. Both of them were tested in at least 30,000 people before or during the stage 3 or phase 3 trials. Phase 3 being kind of the final one before it goes out to be given to people. Phase 3 trials, people had it for more than 3 months, over 30,000 participants. And they didn't find really bad stuff. I mean, they found stuff that we can deal with. We can deal with a sore arm. We can deal with feeling kind of sick for a day. These are things that you can get with the vaccines, and we accept that because of the benefit of them keeping us from getting a really bad disease. Let's talk about how bad the disease is, because when you talk about the vaccine, you can't talk about just the vaccine. You have to talk about what it's for to measure it against something, to say whether the cure is worse than the disease. Let's answer that question. In the United States at this point, we have had so many deaths from COVID-19 that we've had 0.1% of our population die. That's the whole population. That's not just people who got the disease, because it's around 1% of people who get the disease. 0.1% of the United States has died from COVID-19 this year, or in 2020. That's very serious. Now let's talk about how bad is the vaccine. Well, about 6 people in the first 500,000 people receiving the Pfizer product had an anaphylactoid reaction. Notice I didn't say anaphylaxis, I said anaphylactoid. There's a slight difference. And it has to do with how the body's actually responding. They all recovered. So 6 out of 500,000 had a bad reaction, but they're fine now. So that comes out to 12 per million, or a little more than 1 in 100,000. So 1 in 1,000 Americans has already died. And that's with only about, a tenth of the population getting it. There's a lot more people that could get it if we don't use the vaccine and if we just let it go. A lot more. So a tenth of the country has already died. Or I'm sorry, not a tenth of the country. One in 1,000 in the country has died, versus a little more than 1 in 100,000 has a bad reaction that they recover from. That's 100-fold difference. You are, with the virus just having spread as much as it has so far, and it's going to keep going if it's not stopped, just as much as it's done so far, you're 100 times better off with the vaccine, or 100 times less likely to have a bad reaction you recover from than dying. 100 times more likely, let me say that again, 100 times less likely to have the bad reaction, 100 times less likely to have the bad reaction you recover from than dying from it if you don't get the vaccine. 100-fold difference is what we see with early numbers coming out. And this is very rough, but it's on as far as the general numbers relative to each other. So I wanted to get that out for somebody talking about the vaccine. And then as far as safety over time, that's another thing you need to think about. This is about 3 months of data. Actually, we're probably coming up on 4 months of data now. And generally, you're going to see the really bad things when you're putting out something new up front. Here comes Dr. Gwain. Dr. Gwain, we're talking about the safety of the vaccine and bad effects and such for those people who want to know this kind of data. So I think a lot of what's going on is not wanting to get something before we have all the information we could from studies,
Oh,
because
sure.
usually we wait for a full year from the time that human subjects have started getting it in these phase 3 trials
Right.
to get the full regular authorization. This emergency use authorization is after just 3 months. Now we're coming on 4 months on some of the vaccines
Right.
of data. So a third of the time that we would normally have before saying, yeah, that vaccine's good, we checked it out. So there is a potential for things to happen, like these anaphylactoid reactions that did occur when it was rolled out to the general
Yeah,
population,
that they weren't really seeing in the.
which everybody recovered from.
Yep.
And it happened to 6 out of 500,000 people, or roughly 1 in 100,000, which makes you 100 times more likely to die of the vaccine, with how many people have been affected by it so far, than to have an adverse reaction that you recover from.
Yeah, you said die from the vaccine. He actually means die from
I'm
COVID.
sorry, for COVID, if you got COVID.
Yes.
Nobody's died from the vaccine,
No, which is
which is wonderful.
yeah.
But 1 in 1,000 Americans has already died from COVID, just so far, with only about, what, maybe 10% of people having had it?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there?
Yeah. It's about that. We're just now reaching I think 30,000. So 30 million, not 30,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
we're-
Yeah, so expect that it's going to be a lot worse than that, a lot worse than 1 in 1,000.
Sure. Yeah.
When we multiply it by 10.
Right.
And that's what it is. It's about a 1% mortality
That's what they.
at this point, which is better than it had been and what it looked like.
But yeah, we're thinking above 2%. But still 1%. That's
Yeah.
a lot of people.
So-
and we are filling out death certificates.
Yeah,
of
we
those
actually,
people,
yeah,
unfortunately.
we've seen it in our practice.
It's around here.
Yeah. So as it spreads, if it were to get everybody, if it were to not be abated and just keep going, it looks like it would be projected by us. It would be projected to be a 1%, not a 0.1% mortality for the country.
Yeah, because if we expand those statistics. Now,
And so that would
simple math.
that would
but-
project out that it would be 1,000-fold difference between your chance of dying
Having-
versus your chance of having a
Just having a
reversible bad reaction. 1,000 times more likely to die without
Sign
it
me up.
than to have a reversible bad reaction to the vaccine.
Yeah, sign me up.
1,000
Sure.
times difference. Please sign me up for the
Yeah,
vaccine,
yeah.
please.
And if you are in one of those groups that needs it, when it is available to your group,
Yes.
please go. get
I'll
it.
take it in my eyeball. That's how strongly I feel about it.
Wow.
Thankfully, I don't have to.
I was
I'm
gonna
really
say,
glad I don't have
I
to.
don't know about that.
So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Dr. Wayne's almost there.
I would not take it in my eyeball.
maybe not the
I don't
eyeball.
know
Oh,
if
man,
I'm
we've
that-
got lots of
that
comments
far
here.
along, but I will gladly roll up my sleeve and take it in the arm. Yeah. Hello, doctor from the Philippines.
Okay, and Real Ruler's pointing out that there's going to be a lot more testing still going on. We're still following those phase 3 people
Oh yeah.
as it continues to
still
get rolled out.
getting
So
more
there
data.
will be more data for people other than us to get, people who don't have the high risk and
Right.
aren't in phase 1A and B, and
Right.
those phase 2 people, I guess, will have a lot of data
Yeah.
before they get. Suki says, my daughter has PCOS. Because of that, her chance of having a baby is slim. With any research on the vaccine adding to that, people who are pregnant, we don't have enough data to say one way or the other on the vaccine.
Right.
Generally, a lot of people are still recommending getting it, even though it's an unknown.
Right. We give a lot of vaccines during pregnancy. The ones that we worry about are the live attenuated vaccines. This is not that type of vaccine. So, extrapolating data, we assume that it's okay. But yes, we need more data for sure.
So it's an unknown on the vaccine side, but it's a known on the COVID side. Bad in pregnancy.
Yeah.
So I actually do encourage people who are pregnant to very seriously consider getting it. I don't discourage them from it, but
Yeah.
there's a discussion that should take place with pregnancy.
Right. Yeah, the way that it works, an mRNA vaccine is not something that's going to cross the placenta. So you will build up an immune response, and actually some of those antibodies that you build up will be transferred to baby across the placenta and in breast milk. So you will be giving some passive immunity to your baby just through what we know with how vaccines work and how they work in pregnancy.
Another great question. Doctor, will it be possible to use my daughter's white blood cells instead of the vaccine? she's a COVID-19 survivor.
Oh, well, those are two very different things that we're talking about there. So right now, and I don't know what you mean by white blood cells. What you're probably talking about is the using somebody else's, what is it called, donor plasma,
Correct.
which is approved, but that is for treatment, not for prevention. So we're talking about two completely separate things. The vaccine is for prevention, so you don't get the disease at all, whereas the donor plasma is more treatment, and even then, it's
really
only approved for severe cases.
It didn't turn out to be that great.
Yeah, it's approved. It's kind of like the remdesivir, lots of hype without. Right now, steroids. That's kind of where we're at. That is the greatest thing we got, and that actually, I have patient testimonies from my own patients to say, yeah, steroids got me out of it. I had one guy in the ICU, and steroids turned him around.
Steroids, good old super inexpensive stuff we use all the time, miracle drug.
Yeah.
Yeah, you laugh, and people do laugh at my calling it a miracle drug, but it is. It saves lives.
It does, yeah. That's what
It is incredible what steroids do.
Yeah.
That's good. There's risks to them too, so they shouldn't be used inappropriately.
Right.
But yeah, you're talking about the passive immunity from the plasma that
Yeah.
We're
not giving that preventively by any means at this point.
Yeah. And then you have to, I don't think they can just take it from any donor to any recipient. Even if they're related, I don't think you can do that. Because of the factors that are in there. It's processed and and then we were getting people for donors for it. Did you see those emails? They were from Sutter. They're asking for people who would be appropriate donors, but it's just really, it's not happening because we're not seeing people turn around every time you give it. And the studies that compare it against placebo treatments or standard treatment just don't showing that much difference compared to steroids.
Right.
Okay, another really good question. Do we know how long the vaccine protects a person who gets it? Which ties in also to a question that many people may have. People who know that you survived COVID-19 may wonder, why are you getting it if you already had it?
Yeah, that is a great question. So as of now, we know that people who have been infected with COVID can be reinfected. There are cases. It's unlikely, but it does happen, and we have seen it.
We haven't seen it. It's rare enough it gets written up.
The scientific community has seen it. And when we see it, they document it because it's so rare. But it does still happen. So right now, following the blood of people who have gotten COVID-19, we are seeing a drop-off in the amount of their antibodies at around 3 months, I think is what I was reading. As far as the vaccine, it's staying steady. We're seeing that we have a longer, and right now those people who I got vaccinated, I think, are still having same levels from the data that I've seen. So right now, getting vaccinated gives you a longer immunity versus just having the infection. So there's
reason to get it.
There is, yeah. Again, another point for vaccine versus herd immunity and just getting it naturally.
Yeah. So antibodies, we've seen declines. Could happen with the vaccine.
Yep.
It could be that it's one of these things where they go, you know what, we should probably give you a booster annually.
It could be.
And that would probably be, given what we know now, I think that's kind of the worst.
That would be, yeah.
Cycle that we're anticipating.
Sure.
And probably would be better.
Yeah.
So that's a good question.
Yeah, when we talk about vaccines, there are different immune responses, I guess you could say, and how well your body maintains an immune response to that. So some of these things, like the flu is mutating enough that every year we're getting a vaccine. But that's more because the virus is mutating. Some things we get a booster longer because we see it wane. For example, Tdap, tetanus, every 10 years because we start to see it fall off after that.
Just because of our bodies. Yeah.
And then some things we just give you a one-time, and maybe a booster later. Like MMR is probably a pretty good example of that. You get it a couple times when you're really young and you're good. Right now they're recommending, maybe middle age to get a booster, but for the most part, MMR works really well for long term. But anyways, you get different responses. So over time, we're going to have to see and track how well this creates immunity in people who get it.
Laura Barzik asks, I have an allergy to cephalosporins. Should I make sure my provider knows to see if there can be an adverse reaction from the vaccine, but also have several autoimmune diseases?
It's a great question. And the question is, what kind of reaction do you have when you take cephalosporin? So right now they're saying if you have never had an anaphylactic, specific anaphylactic reaction to anything else, there's really no increased risk to having anaphylaxis. If in the past you've had an anaphylactic reaction, throat swelling, you needed to use your EpiPen to get out of it, then they say that you should be cautious and probably be watched right afterwards to make sure you don't develop an anaphylactic reaction.
Right.
So,
Yeah, if it was just you got a rash from cephalosporins, not relevant.
we don't care.
As far as your, what was it, autoimmune? Autoimmune diseases, I know of no issues there at all.
Yeah.
It's people with immune deficiency.
Right. Yeah. For most
compromised.
people with autoimmune diseases, when I contact our rheumatologist and having a conversation about vaccines, rheumatologists by far, most of the time, except for those live attenuated vaccines, are always like, get them vaccinated. They need it. And it's,
Although with some of the medicines they take, the disease modifying,
it can reduce the response. You're right.
they would be more in need of the vaccine because they're more vulnerable because of those medicines they take.
Yep.
The anti-rheumatologic drugs, I guess is what they call them.
DMARDs, yeah.
And Julie Simru says, just out of interest, do you have to pay for the vaccine in the U.S.? Or does the government cover the cost?
I'm guessing
Government
she's
covers the
not in
vaccine.
US.
The what?
I guess I'm guessing she's not in the U.S.
So the vaccine's free to everybody in the country, eventually, when we get it rolled out.
Yeah.
The administration of it from the doctor is not free.
Yeah.
But it's going to be covered by all the
We still,
insurances.
because we still have to use our staff to
Yeah.
go out there and give you that vaccine, and that
The government's,
it's not much.
government's giving us the vaccine and the materials to go with it, like your little
Yep, everything we need to
vaccination
give
card.
it, and then we're supplying the manpower to
Manpower.
give it, and we charge you for that manpower essentially.
Uh,
It's not much.
How many vaccine shots do we need? 2 shots.
Right now it's 2. Yeah.
That could change.
Now there is another one coming out, right? Is it the?
Well, AstraZeneca's been
the
approved in
AstraZeneca
the UK and in India.
Okay, that's
It's-
a single. That's
it's
a
2
single.
shots.
Oh, that is 2 shots.
It's the one where they talk about maybe doing a half dose.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And we already talked about the half dose Moderna proposition earlier in the show.
Oh, okay. All right.
Pfizer vaccine requires second shot 18 days later. 18 days. Have you ever heard 18 days?
I have not heard that either.
I have not heard 18 days. I think it was, but that may be. It was initially 21, and then Moderna's the 28.
Yes.
What's this? Both approved vaccines have 1 shot, then another about a month, something like that. Yeah.
It's about what it is.
England went into full lockdown an hour ago. Scotland, Wales, very similar. Yeah,
That's up to date.
that new strain, which we also have in Colorado,
We have in here in the.
which is more contagious but not more dangerous and not any different as far as its response to the vaccine, thankfully.
Yeah.
It's just part of the whole thing.
Getting more people sick. Yeah.
Yeah, let's get people vaccinated as quick as we can. Laura Webb says, I saw where the second vaccine says that if you are allergic to seafood that you cannot take it. What about the first injection?
I think that would be the same thing where if you have an anaphylactic reaction to seafood,
To anything.
to anything, including seafood, then you should just be aware of it. It's not a contraindication or reason not to get it. It's just a reason to be aware and have whoever's administering it
Have the
watch you
EpiPen
closely.
there. Watch you for 30 full minutes,
Yep.
and they'll be good.
Yep.
Nicole says she's scheduled for a second dose, and congratulations on getting your
Excellent.
first dose.
Excellent.
Very good.
That's great.
Very good. We'll all be able to, well, not all, but eventually a lot of us will be able to
vaccine
say that.
passport.
I already told them that you got your appointment that you're
I
going to
do.
do this
Yeah.
week. And
So are we gonna live stream that?
should we? Do you want us to live stream the actual us getting?
Administration
Of course,
getting a poke in the arm.
that might kind of require the folks work for the county being cool with us pulling out our.
Yeah, right.
our phones and doing
we'd
it,
have to
so-
have them sign a release or something. but-
Yeah, well, maybe I should take some. Thank you. I should take some along when we go.
Hey.
Okay,
Yes.
so
Or we could just not.
that was a lot of questions.
We'll keep you updated on how we do with our vaccines.
Yes. So, did you have
If you
anything?
don't hear from me, I'm in. No, just kidding.
If you never see us again, you might want to rethink.
If you never see, we're not here because we grew a
Which-
third arm or a third eye or something.
Thankfully,
Yeah.
it's just a week from now that they'll see us afterwards, and so they'll be able to see.
We'll be able to give you an update.
Yeah.
By then, we will be vaccinated.
Yeah, we'll probably have a degree of protection within a week.
And outside of the
A degree, not full
Yeah,
protection.
not full protection.
Well, we'll never have full. Well, we could be those who do, and it could still come out to 95% because of those who,
Right.
yeah. So anybody you want to thank or point people to?
Yeah. I don't know if you said earlier, but there is a new blog out today. Just my annual guide to keeping your resolutions. If that interests you, go check that out at drgreenknight.com. And I do appreciate those who have supported me over on Patreon. That is Boo Boo Kitty and Teresa Roth. Thank you for what you do.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
And when you weren't here, I tried to remember Teresa Wild's name, and I couldn't come up. Sorry, Teresa.
The Alzheimer's kicking in.
Thanks. Thanks for letting them all know. And I also would like to thank Boo Boo Kitty and Lindsay Antwine. Thank you for your being a part of, and all the people who are part of our Patreon and members of the channel. It's nice to do it together, so we appreciate you showing that. And if anybody wants one of those cool mugs you can see when you watch our, well, we gave it to Gian.
Oh,
when he was our guest.
Excellent.
The new ones should be in
I was on vacation.
Yeah, I think we got new ones ready to be open. So until next time,
hey, I'm Dr. Wayne Vaughn.
Dr. Mark Vaughn telling you to stay in good health.
See ya.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, all right.